having technical difficulties. It's been a day for that. Huh, Holly?
Yeah.
Okie doke. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. We're happy to have you with us joining in this capacity. Just as our normal introduction, in accordance with board policy, this announcement is to advise all attendees that tonight's board meeting is being recorded. Persons wishing to address the board on any agenda or non-agendized item would need to email Velma, and that is in the agenda. If you're able to open that up, Velma Silva at sylvan.k12.ca.us. I'd like to report out of closed session that all direction was given to staff regarding all matters. And as we look to adopt the agenda, if it's okay with the rest of you, I would like to table the discussion item 9B, that was a return to in-person board meetings. I actually had put that on the agenda, have done a little bit of research, but looking at the items that we need to discuss tonight that are of more import and a little more urgent, and with as long as our board meeting is going, I'd like to table that until possibly next meeting, if that's all right with you. So those, if there's no objection to that, for those who would make the motion to adopt agenda, you'd need to do so without item 9B. So looking for a motion.
So moved without item 9D.
9B.
9B.
Okay, that motion's been made by Mr. Raw and seconded by Mrs. Talcott. Roll
Board
call, please.
Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Raw.
Aye.
Board Member Talcott.
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead to the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. Face your nearest flag, direction of it. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's so hard to do when we're all different. I worry that one of these days I'm going to say it wrong. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the communications portion of our agenda. The first being written communication. Do we have any written communication at this time, Mr. Frederickson?
Well, I don't believe we do we?
Very good. Nope. Okay, very good. And then public participation. Silva, do we have any public participation at this time?
I refreshed my email and we do not have any.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead to our information and discussion portion of our agenda. We'll start with our superintendent's update regarding reopenings, vaccinations, and new legislation. Never a dull moment.
Oh, man. And it's ever changing. Yeah, trying to keep up to date on the curve with all of these. I'm going to start with reopening. Again, I just want to acknowledge all the work of our staff for our 4-5, welcoming them back this month. And, they're settling in. And then before we can even get settled with them, we start shifting over to 6th grade and then 7 and 8. So this week has been dedicated to preparing for our 6th grade return. We sent out our parent learning options survey where they can choose between distance learning or in-person learning. And the initial response, we had about 80% that were wanting to come back, but that did not include some of the non-responders who didn't turn in their surveys. So the sites have been very busy making phone calls, trying to reach those families. But so right now, the numbers look like at Savage, we've got about 66% for in-person, Somerset 55%, and USTAC 52%. So, again, we have more than half of our students wanting to return. So that's positive. Again, with the reopening for 6th grade, we can move forward with that opening on the 15th. And this is where it gets complicated because all about the red tier. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Remember, our 6th grade were part of our TK6 wafer plan. And what kept them from coming back was the same thing that was impacting our 4-5 students. because we were in deep purple, which was above 25 per 100,000. So with being below that, we are permitted to reopen with our sixth graders. So we're able to keep that timeline. Our staff has been very busy planning, because that's at the middle school. So a little different dynamic than the elementary. So we'll be set for them to return on the 15th. So wow, is that next Monday? Next Monday. All right, our middle school campuses will have students. We've had small groups there, but this is, kind of getting back to some more regular school. Now, the next round pertains to reopening for 7-8. We sent those surveys out this week, starting to get those responses back. I don't know what the numbers are at this point, because they're still working on that selection. And the plan for that was opening March 29th. Now, this does depend on the county being in red. And this is kind of the danger when there are statements made in public about projecting that, hey, March 15th, hey, we're going to be in the red. That sets an expectation for a community. And so I think since that was made over a month ago, I believe it's been about that amount of time, there's been this high expectation that everybody will be back because we'll be in the red. And the rates were trending down, but they've dipped up a little bit. So Tuesdays are the big days that we see whether or not we're moving that direction. And we actually moved away from qualifying for red on this last one. So it was right now, I pulled it up, the metric is at 13.4, and we need to be at 7 or below. So the way this works, again, so I kind of got a drop dead date coming with this, and that for us to start on the 29th, we're going to have to meet the metric next Tuesday. If we don't meet it next Tuesday, it gets kicked down a week at a time, because it takes 8 days to be qualified. So if next week is the 16th, it would be a week plus 1 day, which would be in the middle of our spring break. If not, then will be a week from the 23rd or whatever that is, which is after when we plan to start. So we would have to delay our start until April. So that has, different implications for us. One, it delays us getting our kids back. That's a big deal. And it also will have some implication on when I share with you the new reopening law that's going into effect that the governor signed. So, positive news about getting our sixth graders back, but that's why I kept putting on our notices to our parents, contingent upon being in the red tier. You can't get around that. Now, the governor made an announcement. He's trying everything he can to get kids back in school. Part of his proposal that just came out is in counties where you have populations, more disadvantaged populations, he's trying to make sure that vaccines get out to those families. So in our county, if we get to 200 or 2 million vaccinations, then it will trigger a new metric. So it'll go from somewhere between 4 and 10 to be in the red. So they're kind of linking vaccinations with the level of exposure and risk. So that's why I'm saying this is just a moving scale every day. I don't know when we will reach 2 million and what will be the new metric. We'll probably find out by next Tuesday. So that could have an impact on the ability to reopen. Any questions on that?
I had one. You had mentioned in the past, Mr. Frederickson, that you weren't sure if he was going to allow a grace period. It doesn't sound like that's going to be a thing for the 7-8 opening after March 30th. Have you?
I believe that once you're open and you go back into purple, I believe they're going to want to keep you open. So I think once we get, is that what you were talking about, a grace period?
No, so the funding, you remember the funding for.
Oh, yeah, with the new
March 30th
proposal,
date.
Yeah, what happens with that new proposal if you don't open by the 1st? Because we've already reopened our other programs, we wouldn't be under the new guidance that requirements. It would just impact the funding part of it.
Right.
So you wouldn't get funded for those 7th and 8th graders that didn't get there, but you would get funded for TK through 6.
Got it. So he's not going to give any grace period for not quite cutting it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. We'll get more detail on that.
Very good. Mrs. Lindsay.
Yes, Mr. Frederickson, does this applies to everybody in the state of California, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Stanislaus, because we can't get out of purple for some reason, but I mean, we're talking all middle schools in Stanislaus
I'm
and
sorry.
all high schools.
Well, if you haven't reopened yet in those grades, which that one little small window we hadn't read, they can stay open, but that applies, if you're not in the red, that applies to all middle school and high school. You're not.
Okay, so there was a period of time, so the community can understand that there was a little short, like a week or two, where some districts decided to go right back in and when we were in that little bit of red.
Yep.
They get to continue to stay in the red. The
Yep.
ones that did not get back in are not allowed to go back in until it is red.
Yes. Yep.
So if they're not being forced to go back out, then it stands to reason if we ever get in, hopefully we will be able to stay in also,
Yeah.
like they are.
That's what I
So-
understand. Yeah, the intent is once you're open, unless something drastic happened, you would remain open.
Okay, so this is where I'm gonna make my, come on, Stanislaus, let's get to the red. Come on, people, come on, help us get to the red so we can get our kids back in school,
Yes.
okay? Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Yep. Yeah, good cheerleading there. I want to get those kids back. And the staff are excited about them coming back as well. Okay, so any more reopening questions that I can provide clarification? Okay.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Well, the next thing I want to talk about is vaccinations. That seems to be another big topic, big push. Originally, and that keeps changing. And I appreciate the work of Carrie Albert in our district, who's been coordinating with public health. And at first, we were trying to provide pods where we could get educators vaccinated. And that started out, first of all, age 50 and over. And so, but there was such a shortage of vaccines, we could never get the pod to come together. So last Friday in my superintendent's meeting, it was all of a sudden within this short period of time, now there's an abundance of vaccines. And now they've opened it up to all educators to do that. And yeah, which is really positive. And there's the public health is able to have clinics scattered throughout the county, and local vendors and pharmacies are helping out, and Kaiser. And so all of a sudden, man, you can find a vaccine. And now I just read today that Johnson & Johnson is available. So if you want the one shot, they're going to have a clinic just for educators on Friday at the Modesto Center Plaza. So all of a sudden, and then we've determined at our superintendent's meeting that really there's no need to try to put together pods. So there's an abundance there. So boy, I tell you, talk about things just changing so quickly. And again, I believe that the governor was talking about setting aside 40% of the vaccines to get educators, ensure that they are, get that opportunity. So, and it seems like a lot of districts, employees are finding ways to get there. A lot of that's taking place. So that's positive. That's a good sign. And then the last thing, I just wanted to just give you just a brief overview. There will be more details on this. That's that legislation with AB 86, which is about reopening grants and then the extended learning and addressing interventions for learning loss. That has been a big debate and things that was in the news for weeks, and a lot of advocacy going on to try to make it realistic for schools, to get it to really work. And so the governor and legislature did come together and he signed this bill. And the first one is $2 billion. It's the reopening grant. And there's just a couple of, I'll just read a couple of the criteria with it that he's talking about. So and it still relates to purple and red and the other tiers. So if you're below 25 per 100,000, that's still purple, you must offer in-person instruction to the prioritized student cohorts and grades K through 2 or TK through 2. So we're already qualified for that. So with this money, he's looking at trying to get schools to reopen. That's his main thing. Since we've already reopened, we already qualify, even in the purple, for this grant because we opened up our TK3. If you're in the red, here's the new requirement with that, is that you must offer in-person instruction to your priority student groups and cohorts, which we've been doing as well. And you have to do it K through 6 and 1 full grade above grade 6. So in purple, we qualify because we have TK3 and now 4, 5, and we'll have 6. But if we go into the red, we have to make sure we have up to at least 1 middle school grade, which would be 7 or 8. And we're bringing them all back. So either way, we're totally on track to be participating in this. The big thing with the governor's proposal that schools felt it was too restrictive, that you were asking us to reopen, and the big deal was the testing cadence. We felt it was just really unreasonable. We couldn't do it. So that was the big settle with the governor, is that if you already have a reopening plan, you're already open, you are grandfathered in. So we would not be required to follow the strict testing cadence, because basically we've proven that we can safely reopen. And on the agenda tonight is just, again, just to make sure we're in compliance, is our updated COVID safety plan. So we're going to get this done. It had to be approved prior to the end of March. The other, and I alluded to this a little bit, the governor's also modified the metric to get out of purple. So the 200 million mark of vaccines in a county. Once in the red tier, this change comes with the obligation to open TK2, not just TK2, but all the way to grade 6. So I've already talked about that. I've just talked about the grandfathering clause. And this was interesting. A lot of times you have to apply for a grant. With this, they changed, they negotiated that you don't have to apply for it. If you have reopened, you automatically qualify for the funding that's associated to that. And so we'll have to be submitting, what grades and that we have open. They'll determine our funding upon that. And if a district chooses to remain closed, they receive no money, because there are some districts in the state that have already determined they do not plan to open this school year. So they won't be part of the equation at all. Now, the other thing was the 4.6 billion. This is extended learning and addresses interventions for learning loss. And with this, at least 85% of the funding must be spent to support in-person instruction, and up to 15% may be used to support distance learning. So again, they're still acknowledging that distance learning can be a component, and there might be some to necessitate that, so we can use some of that funding. There's big discussions about, do districts continue with a virtual learning platform? And when we talk about advocacy with our state legislators, that would be, when you're talking about Ledge Action Week, right now, even if we had the funding, the regulations don't support a virtual learning academy, because you either have an ADA model where it's in-person learning, or you have independent study, which is very strict on the guidelines. So I think the acknowledgement is some students really succeeded with distance learning. But the state's going to have to acknowledge that by giving districts some flexibility to create those type of programs. So that would be great. We'll be researching that, preparing. But again, we can't do it if we don't have a change in the regulations. It also talks about at least 10% of the portion of the LA, what we receive in their total LCFF entitlement must be used to support paraprofessionals. So 10% of that allocation will need to be spent on having to retain or hire full-time paraprofessionals, which our district has been very supportive of that. We acknowledge that, how valuable those employees are. So I appreciate that's even included in there, because that just helps that also as a priority in the classroom, especially when we're looking at intervention for students and just the extra support they provide. And then we'll be getting a template with this one in the summer. It could be this summer. We'll be getting a template. We have to write a plan. Well, it has to be done by June 1st, I believe. So it better be here by this summer. So this one, we have to do a detailed plan on how we're going to use those funds. But, we'll hear more about that. There was some discussion about the American Rescue Plan, which is the federal stimulus plan. It's looking like a $1.9 trillion package. What they're estimating for education is about $130 billion, which to California means $13 billion. So keep your eye out on what we should hear more about that within the next week. We don't know any regulations that pertains to and what kind of plan it requires, but Lizette, I'm sure, will be keeping us up to date as soon as she hears. But any questions on those programs? Yes.
Yeah, let me just ask mine really quick to clarify. Can you clarify the number, the county vaccine number again? How many did you say?
200 million.
200 million.
No. You don't have that. many
2
people in-
million. 2 million.
2 million.
Sorry.
2
2
million.
million.
Well, we were at
Million in
64,000.
our-
I was thinking money. I like the 200 million sound of money. No, 2
So,
million. Sorry.
If you have 2 million people, I don't even know how many people are in our county. Does anyone know that number?
At least 2 million.
Well,
We have,
We were at 65,000 5 days ago,
that's the number we were at. Oh, dear.
vaccines given.
But what's our total number in the county? Does
Oh.
anyone-
I'll
A
look
little over 500,000.
Yeah. So I don't know what.
But remember, it's 2 shots, so when they say vaccine, that's 1 shot. And say every person needs 2 shots. So
Yeah, I'll look at my notes where I took that from. I took it
Okay.
right off. Yeah. Make sure I
Okay.
got that correct.
But what that does is if we hit that number, whatever that number is, when you get back to us on that, what does that mean? Does that give us exemption from the purple that allows us to go ahead and open?
What that does is it allows the governor to expand and modify those numbers. And it would, right now it's 7. You have to have 7 per 100,000. What I read is it could go up to 10.
I
So
see.
we just made, a little more
Okay.
flexibility to get schools open.
Okay. Yeah,
But-
if you get back to us on that number, that would be great.
Yes, I will.
Yes, Mrs. Lindsay, you have a question?
yes, Mr. Frederickson, I'm a little bit confused. If we qualify and we qualify for that 2 million, and we say we want it, and our kids go back, but our kids can't go back and because of the red, are we going to be penalized that 1% every day?
I believe so for that grade level. So we'll have to look at what the formula is, because we opened within the purple and we did expand it all the way to grade 6 within the purple. We would get credit for those grades. Probably the 1% per day you would lose would be based upon those grades 7 and 8 that you didn't bring back. Or remember, you're only supposed to bring back 1 grade. So maybe it'll only be on 1 grade penalty.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was concerned that it was going to be across the board and affect all our classes, even though we are in class.
Yeah.
So, Thank you, Mr. Frederickson.
Very good. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Frederickson, for that update. Certainly a lot of good news and a lot of headed in the right direction, which we're all very ready for.
Yes.
So let's just keep the push. I know Modesto City's message constantly is the same thing that Mrs. Lindsay said, is this takes a community to get our numbers down, and let's not be the last ones out of the purple barrel, shall we? All right, very good. Let's jump to 9C then, our COVID-19 and one-time funds update, Ms. Aguilar.
Thank you. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so I can share the report. Give me just a moment to get there. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So the discussion from Mr. Frederickson was a perfect, I think, segue into this discussion as we look at, and I provide the board an update on the COVID funds that we've been discussing. And I just want to go back and just for point of reference, point out that in previous meetings, I think the meeting before last, I'd shared this document, this wonderful color-coded document that we've been looking at, which I try to make the color coding coincide for the most part. I think I need to make one adjustment. But I am presenting it in a different format because of the change of the funding that Mr. Frederickson spoke about. And because I think it's important to look at that with the time frame in mind. So I just want to point out that that funding is includes the funding that we've been previously talking about. And so I've illustrated here in a time frame, which we've discussed in our budget study, but I'm going to just kind of summarize and recap and say that everything except for this light blue and this dark blue is funding that we had already been discussing in terms of COVID funds that have been confirmed by CDE, and the amounts that have come from the CDE website in terms of what our proposed amounts are. This new funding here in the blue is the AB 86 that Mr. Frederickson spoke about, the in-person instruction grant and the expanded learning opportunity grants. And both of these amounts are preliminary. As Mr. Frederickson shared, it's hot off the press. Just this past Friday, Governor Newsom signed the bill, and per the bill, those amounts will be confirmed by CDE within 15 days after the signing of the bill. So these preliminary amounts are from another very reliable source that all districts use, School Services of California, to provide us some estimated amounts. And so that's these here. And so I want to make sure that we're waiting those final amounts. And then in looking at the significance of this funding, both in quantity, as you can see between these two blue lines, we're looking at just over 7 million. Previously, we were looking at the funding that we had left with the other COVID funds of about just over $8 million. So altogether here, when you now add in this potential $7 million with what we had existing, we're talking about total funding of just over 16 million. Now you'll notice here at the top in green, I have the previous funds that you're familiar with that we worked to spend with that deadline of December 31st, and that's just over that 4 million. So I have it here for reference, but I've crossed it off to indicate we've utilized those funds. And then just looking at the time frame, I put these in chronological order as we look at the funds and the use of these funds to help us determine the priority in which these funds need to be utilized, or the order in which they need to be utilized, depending on their expiration, because this is what we required by law to use these funds by. And so you'll see that following the 4.4 that we've spent, we have this 621 that we have been talking about that we need to spend by the end of this year, by June 30th. And each of these blocks of time here are a fiscal year or a school year as well. And so in this 2021 year, we have the rest of this time frame up to the end of the year to spend the 621. And then this new funding is significant because it comes in and it really, in terms of time, it really trumps the other funding and the time frame that we have for the majority of that remaining funding. In the yellow and light purple, you'll see both of those are also September of 2020, or also in the 2022 year. And those are September, but these two are even a month before that. So really, if you look at this period of time here, which is pretty much all next year, the 21-22 year, we have this significant amount of funding pending confirmation, again, of not those blue ones, to plan and use these funds. And then in the next year, the 22-23 year, we have all this funding in the dark purple, which is the ESSER II, the second round of stimulus funds that were passed at the end of the year, December 30th, and were signed by the president at the time on December 30th. So that is in the second year out. So really, again, I just wanted to illustrate the time frame and point out that with this 16 million, we have the 2 years to plan, and we are working on bringing a plan, as we discussed in our budget study, to consider these timeframes, consider the funding requirements and restrictions on these funds, and put that together in a plan to look at the best utilization of these funds to help us in working on our overall district budget on these increased needs that we've been working with due to the pandemic, and providing additional supports and resources, as well as seeing how we can potentially leverage some of these dollars for some long-time investments into the district as we are able to do that. So I think that summarizes my budget, or my budget study day. So my update on the one-time funds, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you so much, Sagular. I'm looking now. Let me see. Let me pull this down. Do I have any board members have any questions? Yeah, as you know, we discussed this at length an hour earlier, but perhaps everybody wasn't here for that. Mrs. Lindsay, did you have a follow-up question?
I did. Lizette, last year, remember we went into deferred funding for the last 3 months, I think. And then this year we were supposed to be from February through June. Are we in deferred funding right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Will this money be replacing that deferred funding that they're supposed to pay us back? Will we get that money still, or can we use this to pay for deferred funding? Pay back the deferred funding
So
to the
this
county?
is okay. So this is separate from the deferred funding. It is not intended to replace that in terms of what's due to us.
Mhm.
In terms of the cash arriving, if the cash arrives, and some of the cash for this has arrived and is sitting in the bank. So what arrives and is sitting in the bank can help offset some of our cash needs from now to the end of the year. And that can help, but it's not necessarily going to be the complete solution to the cash deferral that we will be receiving.
Okay, so if the cash deferral doesn't come in until starts in September, isn't that
Well,
the first payment back?
The first
September?
payment back is actually in July.
July. Okay, so it can be used to kind of, as long as we use that deferral money back and replace it back into this pot. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, because it would be part of our overall funds that is in our bank account, if you will, and we can utilize those funds. We're actually required to utilize any of funds that we have in our account at the county level they hold them all together, and we're
Right.
required to use whatever we have available and have some interfund temporary borrowing until we get those deferrals paid back. So yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure because, it's, God, I'm not saying that the state would ever do this to us, but, they are notorious for telling us, I mean, they haven't told us that this money is coming from Prop 98 yet, which it is. It's coming from Prop 98, this $6 million. So it's really money they already owe us, that they're always going to owe us, it seems like. But I just want to be sure that we can use that money. I mean, it obviously is created by COVID, so it's COVID money. So it seems like we should be able to use it to use temporarily, at least for our COVID or for our deferral monies. So, am I wrong in saying that this is Prop 98? Because I was told that this was money that was coming directly from Prop 98.
The only amount that's identified from the state as coming as being Prop 98 is the 600,000 that we have from here to June to spend. So it's
the 2 million
almost
and the 4 million.
almost the smallest portion of all of the funding, but that is labeled as Prop 98. If I recall correctly, I believe the governor had some discretion in how he could allocate some of those funds, but don't hold me to that. But that's the only amount that's labeled Prop 98. The vast majority of this is federally funded and comes to the state, and then the state then passes it on to us.
Right. But I just think my board members and everybody needs to be aware that Prop 98 is money that belongs to us. They've been telling us they're going to pay it back for years. And now whatever money they have in Prop 98, instead of giving it to us, they're using it now and claiming that it's part of this COVID reopening. And will they be reimbursing that Prop 98 fund? Or will that be part of will they assume that's part of our Prop 98 payment?
That is not a part of our Prop 98 payment under our regular LCFF apportionment and what's due to us. This is separate from that.
Okay, great. So we still are going to get someday get that Prop 98 money, right?
Correct.
Okay,
In terms
thank
of the
you, Lizette.
deferrals, yes. Mhm.
Thank you. That makes me feel better to know that we can use this on the deferrals, because that's worried me a lot. I mean, it's a huge amount of money to wonder where you're going to get the money to pay it off. Thank you.
I understand. Mhm.
Thank you. Is there any other questions by board members for Ms. Aguilar? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Appreciate that update. Don't run away too far because we'll do safety and facility update now.
Well, before Lizette jumps into the facility, I can talk about safety. And I have a clarification on the part of my report about the 2 million doses. Again, what that was doing, the governor was targeting areas in our state that were hardest hit by the pandemic. So it's all about equity. And so that 2 million doses is for those regions. So we're talking very large regions, but Stanislaus County qualified as a healthy place on the Healthy Places Index as that was disproportionate as far as the number of COVID cases. So far there's been 1.6 million doses for those designated areas. And he said, once we get to 2 million, then he would have less restrictive tiers. And then it even goes on to say, once it reaches 4 million doses, he'll even expand the flexibility more. So yeah, it wasn't specific to our county, but our county is part of that region.
Yeah, that would be an impossible to nail target.
Yeah.
550,000 population.
I-
Thank you
I
for the
know.
clarification. Very good. Thank you. Okay, go ahead with the safety.
Oh, no, that was my update.
Oh, that was it. Okay,
And she can do the.
thank you. Okay, Mrs. Aguilar.
Thank you. I just have a quick update on UStack. As you know, we continue to work towards closing that out and making very good progress on that. On Friday, this past Friday, I did go out with Sean Smith, and we went out and inspected the repair work for the concrete of all the areas that were identified, and the different more severe cracks and the crumbling concerns, and all the areas that we looked at as had identified previously with those concerns had been repaired. They came out multiple times to I think spend a couple of days out there working on those repairs, and notably in front of the gymnasium area, the multi-purpose, where I think Mr. Raw, you had shared particularly some of the crumbling concerns. Those were not evident. They were no longer evident. You could see some of the areas in which those have been fixed on those corners, but just a greatly improved over what was there before. Some of the crack repairs are maybe slightly darker color as opposed to what's there, and would wear over time to discolor and provide a more uniform look. Right now you can go out and you can see where those repairs have been made, but really the concern is to address those from continuing to further deteriorate, particularly in the areas I think where they came really close to the edge of the existing where the concrete ended. So, but anyways, based on everything that we saw that they had addressed all the areas that we were concerned with. We did find a couple of other areas that we wanted to bring to their attention that hadn't been marked. So I'm going to share those with them, and I know they'll be happy to come out and work with us, and then we can give them their remaining funds that we had been holding. But they have been great to work with in our exchange back and forth, not only with this, but also as we will discuss further in terms of finding solutions for the lockers. So that's my update on UStack at this point. Any questions on that?
I do. So they're about to be tested, right? As far as we're gonna have sixth grader feet hitting the pavement here in next week, which is great. So it'll get a better test of its durability. But you said there's still a few areas that need to be addressed with sixth graders on campus starting next week. Is that going to happen before they're on campus?
I will. I need to touch base with Jesse's person, my primary contact with them over there, and find out exactly when. I haven't been able to do that, but I will do that and get a timeline on that right away.
Very good. Thank you.
Like I said, they've been very responsive.
That's awesome.
From the time that we said we want these fixed right away. They had somebody out there the very next day.
Great. Great. That's good to hear. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Raw.
Lizette, where do we stand on the closeout of the project? Where are we in that process?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So we submitted the paperwork to DSA, as well as the lab and additional partners needed to submit their information. That was the first step. The next step is then DSA sends us the invoice, which we have received, and we're working to process the final closeout invoice to pay the DSA fees. It's about $25,000-ish or so, somewhere in that ballpark. So I don't believe it's on this one, but you'd probably see it in the next board meeting check run. And so we're working through the process. What SKW said is normally from there, then once they get that back, it's usually a matter of a few weeks. It's not a long process after that to complete the closeout process and have them give us their certification that the project is closed.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raw. Yes, Mrs. Lindsay.
Yes, Lizette, obviously, we're still have the issue of the lockers. How are we gonna be able to close out the project until that's completed? Are they going to be putting the lockers in, or is someone else gonna be doing it, or, I mean, that's still part of the project, right?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a part of the project. We can handle that separately because the projects as presented in the projects, I'm sorry, the lockers as part of that project have been installed. The fact that we would like to replace them or not is kind of a separate and outside of that. And so I actually had an update for you when we get to that item to tell you exactly how they have proposed to go about that, but that would be a separate purchase order, a separate agreement outside of the existing whole project that was the modernization. And there's a couple of reasons. One, there would be some time, a lead time to get these ordered, and that would substantially stretch out the existing agreement, which has monetary consequences on their end for insurances and coverages. And the other part of it is it would extend out the closeout process on our end for being able to submit all that and consider it closed with DSA. So it benefits both of us to not necessarily extend that, and it's not necessary as part of the scope of that original project.
So do we have to go back out to bid?
Not necessarily, no. And because there's already been work done on it that was done by, this subcontractor, then that would not be prudent on our part to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you very much. If that's it on that, we'll go ahead and move
Thank
on
you.
to our action items. Thank you, Mrs. Aguilar.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and jump into our 2020-2021 second interim budget report and budget revisions. Mrs. Sandoval.
Actually, I'll be taking this item as well.
Oh, you are? All
I'm on
right.
a roll.
All right.
So let me pull up my screen. Make sure I get the right one. I'm sorry, I have several windows open and I want to make sure I get the right one here. Okay, while I do that, I just want to preface by saying, as you know, this is a time when we go through and review our budget to provide updates and do some work to true up where we can, make adjustments to our existing budget in accordance with, what our actual expenses have been, and try to present just an updated picture every time we do this. First interim provides that first opportunity. Second interim provides the next opportunity, really before as we move into our budget development process, which kind of provides almost that last opportunity before we close out the year. So I just want to thank Lisa and her team. The fiscal department has worked hard to work on the budget revisions, looking at all our accounts and making many entries to, true up things and provide us an updated picture, which is what you have now. It also provides an opportunity to update our projections according to the newest information that we have, which at this point is the January governor's budget that was released with the specific COLA projections for what districts could anticipate receiving in increased revenue in the next couple of years. So here you can see I have pulled up the MYP that you received, the multi-year projection, which indicates to us what our updated position is at second interim and then the next 2 years out. And so here at the top, I just want to point out as I mentioned, the COLAs here in the 21-22 and the 22-23 year for potential increased revenues to the district on our LCFF funding, which is our largest amount of funding here. You can see that increase that COLA reflects here in our funding taking us from a projected 72 million to 75 million to potentially 76 million. Again, on these assumptions of what was released at the January governor's budget. So that's an updated picture on that, which is again our largest source of funding. And really, as you may have noticed in the comparison document, which if I can, let me click on it. I wanted to click on and show you this comparison document that is provided as a compare and contrast from first interim to second interim. When you look at our bottom line here, you see that really when we go from 2.8 million to 2.5 million, I'm going to go back to this document here. I apologize, and which is ties back to this 2.5 million. You see an improved, slightly improved, not significant, but improvements are good. We'll take any amounts, small or big, that may come, of about 300,000 to our overall projection. As we look at the unrestricted side, this is, as you know, we look at the unrestricted and restricted side of the general fund, and this is the unrestricted funds. And we have, like I said, a slightly improved picture here of that for the current year. And then as we look at the 2 out years, again, I mentioned the potential cost of livings that were proposed by the governor and the impact of those. As we look at that 2 out years, you see an improvement in the bottom line here. And this is our bottom line as we net our expenses and our revenues. What is left over, or what are we short? That's a net increase or decrease to the fund balance. We see that for next year projecting to be 125,000, the following year up to 572,000. So an improvement at the next 2 years. And that is obviously driven by this increase that we looked at up here in funding projected on that COLA. So our projections are based on the assumptions that we're making. And at this point in time, that's the assumptions that are being built into this picture in accordance with, you know, the industry standards and the governor's projections that he came out with in January. So I want to point out, as we looked at this update in our budget study, this doesn't account for any other significant changes, as we've been talking about, any potential restorations. But outside of those discussions, and just if we look at things as they are, and if we continue things as they are in the next 2 years without any of those potential restorations or reductions, we see a natural increase potentially of revenues and the district being able to work out of a deficit spending position. Again, I want to reiterate, based on the assumptions we're making here and without any other adjustments. So those are all discussions we're having in budget study as we look at how we plan for and look at the next school year for 21-22. And then in line with that increase, you see down here as we look at the unassigned reserve balance that the board has a target of being about 9 to 10%. We see that projection to end this year at about 9.97, just right at that target, and then a slight increase over the next 2 years with the increase in the assumed increase in the funding. So again, a slight improvement over what we saw before, but we have to keep in mind that each time the projections and the assumptions that we make change, so does the projections of the numbers for the next 2 years. So I think that's the most significant things to note in this update. And I'm happy to take any questions or go through any other information that the board may want some additional information on.
Thank you very much. Looking for questions from the board. I have to kind of jump up and
Let me
down.
stop sharing so we can see.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rock, go ahead.
Lizette, the report looked good. I think maybe some of the board members saw that a couple of the questions I may have asked earlier. The only thing in the report that was of concern to me was the child care fund and the loss of revenue as a result, but yet the expenses didn't really reduce. And so the child care fund lost deficit spent over $400,000 in 1 year. So it pretty much wiped out half of the fund in 1 year. And there was a good answer given. However, we need to be very careful with that fund, and so that fund does not get depleted this coming year. I mean, that if it was COVID that caused that, there's a good reason that we should use COVID funds maybe there. I'm just saying that would, out of the whole report, it all looked actually pretty good. And it was positive, like Lizette said, except for that one fund took a pretty dramatic hit.
Thank you, Mr. Raw. Lizette, just to clarify really quick, but Mr. Raw brought up a point in our budget study session about when we, talk about how these COVID funds will be spent, that they'd be itemized accordingly on our budget. In what you just showed us, they're not on there, right?
Right. Right. And so what we were looking at, and I kept referring to unrestricted funds, because there are other funds that are considered restricted because they have very specific and strict requirements about how those can be spent, such as one that you're probably very familiar with, Title I. These COVID funds, and I think every one of the new one-time funding that we have received would all be on the restricted side because that's how we have to account for them. We cannot count them on the unrestricted. They have a specific account code that we have to give them, and by nature that automatically puts them on the restricted accounting.
Okay, so it's like categoricals are making a raging comeback, a different name.
You are so correct. Yes.
All right, very good. Mrs. Lindsay, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Lizette, I come from a different business world. So from my understanding, every time that the governor comes out with a new projection, you're basing the budget and you're balancing and changing it. Why don't we keep, and this is just maybe a stupid question, I don't mean, this is what I do in my business. Why don't we keep a worst case scenario budget instead of always thinking because when you looked at what you gave us, which I asked you last time, thank you very much for doing it, showing that how the governor's projection in January notoriously is much lower in the final end of the year in the May revision, except for maybe a couple of years. And so why do we not do a budget based on basically zero COLA, zero, not just zero funding, but I mean, we know we're going to get funding for certain things because they are mandatory, but the things that, where we know they're not, why do we continue to balance those around and move those around? Because for me, it's we're not looking at the worst case scenario, and I think it's better to get surprised and get more money than to always be the ones that are being like, oh wow, we didn't get what we thought we were going to get. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, I completely understand where you're coming from, Mrs. Lindsay, and it is I'd say the practice across virtually every district that I know of across the state to budget based on the most recent information that's given to us by the state, because ultimately they are the ones that dictate and determine, what that will be. And so it is a industry standard to do that in our county. When we anytime we provide these budget updates, the county checks what we're using and to ensure that we're aligned with that and using what's reasonable. We could, if the board wanted to, just take a position of making that a standard practice of doing that, if that was something the board wanted to discuss and guide us and say, give us a direction of always just budgeting based on 0 for the future. So that is something, if the board would like to discuss and give us direction on, I think we definitely could have that discussion.
I'm not saying that, that's what I'm asking for. I'm just saying it makes sense to me. And I guess maybe that's just because I run a different kind of business than a school. But to me, when I'm doing my budget here at home, I always look at what could be my worst case scenario and before I move forward. And so I just think even in a school district, it would be wise for us to have that, even if we just kept it over to the side and we just kind of kept it there quietly and watched it, you know what I mean? It would be better than always thinking we're going to get, like last year, he projected 3 something, and then at the end of the year, we got 0. So, I mean, that's hard to just keep going down, 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 down. So I don't know. It's just a suggestion. It's something that I would, if I would think about doing, at least keeping the board kind of knowing what could be our worst case scenario.
Okay, I need to clarify that though, Mrs. Lindsay, because I pulled those numbers back up that you requested and we talked about in budget study session. And prior to COVID, which the bottom fell out of everybody's lives, you can't predict COVID from January to March. So I think we have to wipe that year off as an anomaly, but every other year, the biggest variance was 0.5%. So from what he predicted in January to what manifested in May or in July, the biggest one was 5.5, 0.5% lower, which is not big.
I agree
And
with
there
you.
was one year that was 1.2 more. So be careful that we don't say these huge differences, because there hasn't been huge differences in the past
Okay, then
10 years.
I have lived through where there were huge differences. So that's why I guess where I'm coming from is I feel bad that they're constantly having to juggle those numbers every few months to try to figure how we're going to balance and keep that 10% and how we're going to keep that 3% and all that. This was a question. It was just a question. Would that be something that would be even feasible, or something that would even be something that a school district would think about doing?
It's certainly part of our discussion, right? That we have prioritized list of what we put back or what we take away. And so I appreciated that you brought that up, Cindy, because it really was instructive to see where we've been and where the variations have been, and kind of builds trust, or questions trust. So it really was a good question you asked last time, and for us to be able to see that, I think lets us feel a
And
little
I
more.
have to honestly tell you that there was at one time where we got such a huge COLA, and then years after that we were at 0, and we couldn't even meet the huge COLA that we got the one year. So that's always something that once burned, you always kind of are watching for. So that was just a thought. I just always thought, why do we always redo these figures over and over and over when we could start the other way?
And I appreciate, Mrs. Mika, while you bring in about building trust, because that is another very important point. And as we use these assumptions, we're basing it on the most recent information that we're presenting, and making our best attempt to present a fair picture of what we project based on those numbers. And so it's a balance of ensuring that we are building everything we can, while also presenting a fair picture of what's being presented to us in terms of assumptions. And while we could look at other scenarios, which I think we have done through some of our budget studies of potentials, when we look at our just updated picture, we're working with the most current projections.
Right. And that's why it takes us 6 months to develop a budget, because we have to do it.
Redo it every month.
Yeah. Mr. Raw, please go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the report.
Okay. Motion's been made to approve the second interim budget report by Mr. Raw.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Talcott. Board, roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, next on the action item on the agenda is approving the 21-22 master agreement with SCOE.
Good evening. Each fiscal year, Sylvan enters into a contract with SCO for a variety of services, and this year the dollar amount will be $240,195.50. Does the board have any questions?
Looking for questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Talcott, seconded by Ms. Harvey.
Board
Yes.
Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Raw.
Aye.
Board Member Talcott.
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one is the improvement of the amendment to the COVID-19 safety plan. Mr. Frederickson went over this earlier. The reason for that was to be in compliance and put us in the place to receive the funding. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that, Mr.?
No,
Frederickson?
and we've made very few modifications. I feel like we did a good job when we first posted it. We just changed on the checklist. We included all the way to 8th grade. And then on the second page, we just gave a little more detail related to hybrid instruction and cohorting. But that really is the only changes we've made. And it's been posted on the website, and I just want to make sure I have board action to make sure we're totally in compliance and not jeopardize any kind of funding with AB 86.
Very good. Thank you very much. If they're looking for questions, and if there's not, I would look for a motion to approve the amendment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Raw,
Second.
second by Ms. Harvey. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Raw.
Aye.
Board Member Talcott.
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Action item 9D is approving the MOU with SEA for reopening and return for in-person learning grades 6 through 8. Dee Dee.
Thank you. So for item 10D, presented for the board's approval is the memorandum of understanding between Sylvan Union School District and Sylvan Educators Association. This MOU focuses and addresses the middle school students and staff returning to in-person learning and distance learning for grades 6 through 8.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? This was on an information item last week, so if not, looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Raw,
Second.
second by Mrs. Talcott. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Raw.
Aye.
Board Member Talcott.
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Peterson, Mr. Frederickson. Thank you, SEA, for all the conversations and the problem solving and the, just getting us all in place to reopen in a safe manner. We really appreciate that very much, and so do the kids. So thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the next one, 10E. Thank you, Dee Dee, for clarifying my numbers are wrong. Approving the revised Sylvan Union School District academic calendar. We just, from what I understand, we just put the wrong dates accidentally for the coming year. And this.
So actually a couple
Yeah.
of different districts. So we're just making adjustments. Instead of February 7th, 14th, it will be February 14th and February 21st in alignment with the national holiday.
Very good. All right, so it's really just a technicality. Looking for a motion to approve.
So
Motion.
moved.
Moved by Mrs. Talcott,
Second by Cindy.
second by Cindy. Thank you. Her picture's gone. Go ahead with roll call.
Board Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Raw.
Aye.
Board Member Talcott.
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, item 10F, approve the purchase of OWL technology for grades 6 through 8. Oh, sorry, on the wrong one here. Is that Mrs. Granger? Yes.
Yes, thank you. So tonight I bring forward for the board's approval an item related to reopening schools and our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers providing concurrent teaching. So same lesson, same time instruction to students both in person and at home. Now, the period of time and the timeline from when we had an agreement and we're able to proceed with planning for reopening with this concurrent or hybrid teaching model to the posting of the board meeting last Friday was a short timeline, about 7 days. And so when I posted this agenda item, it included the maximum number of OWL technologies, the associated equipment, the cameras, and all of the accessories that are required for a full functioning OWL station in a classroom. I posted the maximum number that we thought we would need to order, which was the not to exceed 300,000. However, in the period of time between Friday and tonight, I can come back and provide you with more detailed information precisely related to the number of OWLs that we're seeking to purchase for teachers in these grade spans to provide concurrent teaching. And it is in fact quite a bit less than the 300,000 limit that I had previously provided. Again, that was a placeholder to provide us with time to get in teacher interest and feedback from them. So tonight I'd like to amend that item and in fact ask for permissions to purchase the OWL technology in the quantity of 17, about 15 tripods, 15 Elmos that are compatible, 15 sets of cabling, 15 docking stations, and 50 iPads. Remember, we don't keep a large supply of iPads for purposes like this. And so it would require us to purchase additional iPads to be able to support this. So the grand total of that would not to exceed $70,000, not $300,000. The purchase of these items, the accessories and the actual OWL equipment for use for concurrent teaching in the middle school grades will be paid for with COVID funds. I'm happy to take questions. I know I've had the opportunity to answer some questions and provide detailed responses today to some questions, but I'm happy to take additional questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Granger. Yes, Ms. Harvey.
Hi, can you just share for the public just a little bit about some of the amazing interactive technologies? You had talked about being able to give students high fives and things like that. Could you kind of give us some information about that?
Yeah, so the OWL technology was previously purchased in preparation for our 4th and 5th grade and our special day class teachers to return to a hybrid learning environment. And so we purchased a number of OWLs, which is a 360-degree camera and speakers that works on a tripod and follows or tracks the teacher or the speakers in the classroom. It provides for some interaction between the students at home on any given day in distance learning and the students in person. So the students at home can see the teacher displaying something on the whiteboard, the projector, right? But they can also see a panoramic view of the students in their class because the camera is tracking and picking that up. So it does allow for the students at home to hear and see what their peers at school are saying, especially if there's a conversation happening, academic discourse. So it builds that bridge so that there is still the opportunity for kids to interact and engage both with the teacher and with their peers. And in the process of ordering OWLs previously and implementing those in a pilot program prior to rolling them out to our 4th and 5th grade classrooms, which has begun this week, we had some very entertaining and really exciting, innovative experiences with some of our teachers that have piloted this. And one of them that we were sharing previously that Mrs. Harvey is referring to had to do with students being at-home students being projected on the screen in the classroom. So the teacher can see the students and the students, you know, engaging with the teacher and the teacher going by and having them put their hands up on the screen and going by and giving them a high five. So, you know, almost like they're in person, next best thing, even though they can't be.
That sounds really great. And this is, again, this is way more advanced than just a static webcam that you might have at a ski resort or like at the beach, right? This is really interactive and 3D and high tech.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This is an innovative approach to bring together a single group of people, in this case, the students, even though they are physically separated by distance, to ensure some interactivity and some engagement. So yes, it has much more capability than just a static camera. It has audible, we say it has an audible wingspan of about 18 feet, so it can pick up sounds in in that space. The iPad also serves as a digital control and also a digital whiteboard. So as the teacher is moving about the classroom and providing instruction to both in-person students and at-home learners, that iPad becomes a digital whiteboard that is automatically projected so that it can be used to do real quick in-time feedback, make adjustments to a lesson, and be able to provide that information to students both at home and in person, even though the teacher is just in person.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, Mrs. Lindsay?
Yes, Laura, you and I had a long talk today. I wanted to ask if you would share with the board that there is the potential that if we start next school term, that we may still be in this situation. And so if we are, that there's a possibility that we might be needing to purchase more of these.
Yes, what we discussed was the unforeseen future of what exactly school will look like when it reopens in the fall. And if a hybrid model or concurrent teaching is still part of the structure or the environment that we will provide, it is possible in the fall that we would have additional teachers in need of this OWL technology. So while we have purchased a significant amount, so what we're looking for in total is 75 OWL stations. That includes the 25 4-5 and special day class teachers that have requested OWLs for concurrent teaching, and it includes 50 from the middle school from a variety of grades, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade electives, art, music, resource teachers. And so that will give us 75 complete OWL stations in the breakdown that I provided as I began this item. But it is possible, depending upon what our circumstances are in the fall, that we may need to purchase additional units or classroom stations if in fact we needed to expand our abilities or our capabilities to provide concurrent teaching.
Okay, thank you. I think it's just it's important that we all hear that, because we forget, and we forget, oh, didn't we just buy those, And so, I don't want this to come back. I just want my board to be aware that this is a possibility, and that while we are slipping under the 300,000 tonight, we may have to face that again another day. But it's another day. But I think it's important that we think about it.
Thank you. And just for those who are in attendance to know that we received quite a bit of information on this via Friday board update, and we were able to watch the training that other teachers received, which was very instructive and very helpful and very well done. May I add a nod to Jason and is it Melinda? Did I say, wait, right?
Yes,
right?
yes, our two coaches under
Aaron,
the direction of Marty and Aaron.
Marty, yeah.
Yep.
So
It's
that
quite
was
a
very well
package.
done. It really was for someone
Yeah,
who's not particularly tech savvy. I mean, I had a lot of anxiety for these poor teachers and all that they've had to learn already this year. And so on top of that, like Mrs. Granger mentioned and Cindy, a lot of us were back on the phone with Mrs. Granger and had a lot of questions about this. And I appreciated what she said. First of all, this is just one of several approaches, that this is not a one size fit all, that flexibility is given to teachers in terms of, webcams or the other things that you mentioned that they're already doing that might already be working for them. And just for from a mother's point of view, who's watched a child really struggle with engagement issues and having nieces and nephews here, and engagement is a huge problem. And so, it's really my prayer that this is something that really will help that, because there's just a lot of kids that are by this time of year just checking out. It's just becoming really, really challenging and anyone who's had back-to-back Zoom calls, all you leaders know that you get a saturation level of being online. So really hoping that this will prove a successful strategy these winding up months, and should they be needed, and hopefully not, but in the fall, as well as the other uses that she outlined that they could be used for. So if there's no further questions, I didn't get a chance. No. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve the purchase of the OWL technology.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Lindsay.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Talcott. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you to all those who, as she mentioned, yes, please, Mr.
Jennifer, I apologize to my age. I couldn't remember. That was an amended motion, right? Not just.
Correct. Sorry, yes, the amended motion for the not to exceed 70,000 hours.
Right.
Yes,
Okay. Just
thank
making sure.
yeah, thank you. Very good. Thank you to the tech department who had all that problem solving to do. That was quite extensive and we appreciate the boots on the ground. Very good. All right, let's move to 10G, approve the contract with T-Mobile hotspots.
Good evening. I'm bringing to you tonight the approval for a one-year contract for 100 mobile Wi-Fi hotspots for our students to use so that they can access online learning while they are at home. We currently have 300 and we have none available, which means they are being used. We would like to be able to provide the additional 100 to those families that we have not been able to provide assistance to.
Thank you. Marty, could you clarify? I know Mr. Raw asked a question ahead of time and I'm not sure I understood the answer, but are you saying then that we've had to turn people away, that there are people that requested hotspots, but we don't have any? Is that the reason?
You are correct. Yes, we have families who do not have access to the Wi-Fi hotspots at the moment. We also have 200 of these that were generously provided to us by a donor this year that will expire in June. And so that will only bring us down to 100. And just like the owls, we don't know what we're going to be, where we're at next year. This will provide us with 200 hotspots, which will be not as many as what we have, but it will give us a good supply. And the wonderful thing about T-Mobile is that we can suspend the 3 months during the summer. And so they don't charge us for those 3 months. And that would extend our contract really to like a 15-month instead of just a 12-month.
Very good. What happens if it turns out we don't need them?
Well, I'm sure that we can figure out a way to use them. We have, even if we do a hybrid model, we will still have family. I mean, we still have kids that are online. We may have, if we have to pivot any classes still, because again, we don't know what next year is going to be like, we would be able to provide those hotspots to those families if needed, so that they can still learn at home as well if we need to for the staff as well.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Raw?
Yes, Marty, could you provide us in a Friday update? I'm sure T-Mobile could easily print this off for us, but of those current hotspots that we have, could we get the data used on each one of those lines? The reason I'm asking for that is that we may have assigned out 300 lines, but if zero data is being used on 50 of them, we should be getting a report on a monthly basis on which lines are being used. So if they're not, you can call those lines back and give them to kids who would actually use them. So basically I'm suggesting a method to be used so that we're not paying for something that's not being used.
Sure, I can see what I can do. Yeah, no problem.
I know they can do it because my phone tells me exactly how much I've used every time I use it. So I know it exists.
Yeah.
And we track our teens, right? Very good. Thank you. Any other questions for Marty? Oh yes, Ms. Talcott.
You said that we have the ability to, or T-Mobile gave us the ability to suspend for the summer.
Correct.
If we're not using them, do they start the moment we get them, the contracts?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that month does start. And then that time is, we can suspend it because we have a dashboard where we actually go in, we suspend it during that time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion's been made by
Ms. Harvey.
I just went blank.
It was me,
Sorry.
Cindy.
Ooh. Looking for a second.
I second.
It wasn't.
Second,
I
Mr.
wouldn't.
Talcott.
Whatever.
You go black periodically, Cindy. I can't see you.
I keep, because you guys, I'm shutting off because I don't think the world wants to look at my face the whole time.
Whatever. Very good. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Ra,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Next item 10H, approve quote to purchase laptops.
Yes, so I provided a Friday update for you last week in regards to the purchase of additional laptops. Thank you for your approval to purchase the laptops that we purchased last year. We were able to provide over 300 of those to staff, and I can't even imagine what distance learning would be like if we had not done that because of the devices and how old they were. As you can see in the chart I provided to you, both in the Friday update and tonight's presentation, that we have 66 devices that are older, 2016 or older. You can see 19 of them are from 2012. Those are some old apples, which are not functioning as well as they should be. And so with the purchase of these 35, we would be able to provide a good chunk of these to be replaced, and so that we can give functioning devices to our staff.
Marty, why, I was going to ask, and I forgot to send this email to you, but just looking at the chart you sent, is there a reason you chose 35 instead of, knocking out the 2012s and 13s, which would take you over 35? Why did we come to the 35 instead of say, 43?
That was the number that I was approved to use currently for the COVID funds.
Okay.
And so, we'll start with the 35. We'll see where we're at. We only have we actually have none left of the ones from 2000, the ones that we purchased last year. And we also have to remember, we have staff up in the front office and in our back office at the district office who are on a rotating schedule. So they also have laptops checked out to them. So it's not just for our teachers. We do have them for them as well.
Yeah, I just wondered where you got the number 35, just kind of looking at the chart. But if you're doing it dictated by the COVID funds, then that answers that. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the purchase of the laptops.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Harvey,
Second.
second by Mrs. Talcott.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Ra,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Our next one is resolution 10I, adopt the resolution making findings pertaining to developer fees. Ms. Lizette,
Yes,
thank you. Go ahead.
this is an annual item that comes before the board with a resolution on the use of developer fees and a 5-year report outlining the developer fees. I'm happy to take any questions the board may have.
Okay, any questions?
I'll make the motion to approve, but just a clarification for those who are actually read the agenda item. It doesn't show that we use that 700 grand over at USTAC, and that fund really only has about 25,000 left in it after we did the USTAC project. It doesn't have the current year in it. So I didn't want people to think that, oh, it's got 700 grand in it. Actually, it's only got about 2,500 grand in it, but I'm going to make the motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Mr. Ra and seconded by Mrs. Lindsay. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Ra,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Our next resolution, is our Arts Education Month. Mrs. Granger.
Yes, so it's my pleasure to bring forward this resolution to mark March 2021 as the Arts Education Month. We recognize that art is an essential part of education and the skills that it instills in our students. And Sylvan should be quite proud. We in Sylvan have enjoyed a long history of recognizing the value of arts in our classrooms and in our programs. And we have continued to do so even in this period of school closure. So despite the limitations of distance learning and hybrid models and everything that we faced, our art and music teachers have done a tremendous job this year of continuing to provide for this instruction, even in the most challenging of circumstances. So it's wonderful to be able to say that our Sylvan students have continued to benefit from these programs and the benefits that they bring. And so we look forward to honoring and recognizing March 2021 as Arts Education Month.
Thank you. Before I take a motion really quick, I just wanted to just say one thing. I looked up, one of the things that the resolution doesn't talk about, but I think everyone would agree, is that the arts has the ability to help heal. And I think particularly during this last year has proven therapeutic for some. I got online and I saw all these kids across the world, remembering that this is a worldwide pandemic and people are really struggling on a world scale, right? And so they had one case where in England, the schools, there's a particular mom who saw this thing where she said, everyone just go and create some sort of rainbow and put it in your window so that when we're out distance, separating walking, and the kids can see the different rainbows hanging in the window, it's a way of connecting with each other, even though we're, isolated and alone. And they said that in 24 hours, they set up a Facebook page, and in 24 hours, they had 65,000 people that had followed this Facebook page, and they ended up having to shut it down, but it didn't stop it. It just kept rolling from there. It's just a beautiful thing that art has that power to help us to heal and continue on. The one other really quick example was a guy who was playing the piano. They were isolated in his room, and he wasn't playing the piano. He heard his neighbor next to him would play all the time and played beautifully. And he one time just decided to leave a note saying, "Oh, you play so beautifully. Thank you," whatever. And they had this little back and forth. And finally, he never met him. He said he finally just left a note saying, "Hey, can you play this song?" And he played, I think, the theme from Titanic. He heard it through the walls. He played the theme for Titanic. And then he said, "Hey, I play the piano a little bit too. What if I started a song and could see if you finish it?" So they're doing this. They hadn't even ever met each other for whatever reason. So he played the part of a song, and then he'd listen. And that guy picked it right up like that and played beautifully. And he said, finally, after doing this for several months and recording it on a TikTok, he went over and met him. And it was a 78-year-old man who had lost his wife to COVID. And he said, "Thank you so much for this back and forth that we've had for 2 months, because it's made me feel less alone, and it's made me feel connected and helped me to heal." It was just a beautiful story of, and art for me, or music for me, is an auditory art. And it's just a way that it's a very powerful medium that goes beyond words and helps us to connect. So, don't want to let this slide. It's just something we do annually, that it is very powerful. And Mrs. Granger, if it's possible to reach out to our art teachers and get a few sample pictures or whatever and send it to us in a Friday update of some of the things they've done, we would love to see that. We don't get to spotlight and highlight students or people right now. And so that would just be a great addition to what we're doing. So thank you very much. Looking for a motion to adopt the resolution. Moved by Mrs. Lindsay. Second by Mr. Raw. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next one is adopting a resolution. Thank you, art teachers. Thank you very much. Adopting a resolution for the reduction in workforce.
Presented for the board's review and approval is the resolution for reduction in force for certificated staff. The district is proceeding with the layoff on the grounds that a particular kind of service is to be reduced or discontinued not later than the beginning of the following school year. A reduction in particular kinds of services calls for the school district to provide the service in a different method or manner after the layoff of the affected employees. Staff presents this resolution for the board's approval.
Oh, this is a hard one. And maybe Dee Dee, you could say, in terms of we're following, timelines that we have to let this staff know, right? And this is the preliminary notification.
Yes. So no later than March 15th, the governing board must pass a resolution identifying particular kinds of service to be reduced and the full-time equivalent affected, and may pass a resolution containing the tie-breaking criteria, which is our following resolution, for employees that have the same seniority D.
Thank you.
Can I just make a quick comment, Jen? This is something we do every year. This is something every district does. It's just It's just to follow proper law, I think is the way to put it.
But we haven't always had to.
No, yeah, we don't always do it. But I will say, I'll make the motion, but I just want to tell the people out there, I personally, you know me, I'm Mr. Budget guy, but I personally feel that even though we're passing this, I have faith that we won't have to use it, in such a way that people won't be able to come back. I really think people are going to be able to. I just have faith that it will work out, but it is a procedural thing that we must follow. And but I have faith that all will be well, and we will not really have to do a permanent layoff to anybody.
Yeah.
That's my own faith. I can't promise anything. I'm only one person, and I'm not clairvoyant, but I do have faith that it will work out. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raw. Motion's been made by Mr. Raw.
Yeah, I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Lindsay. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, thank you. And then as mentioned, the next resolution is the criteria for determining the order of seniority for reduction in workforce certificate. I think she addressed that already. Did you have anything else, Dee Dee?
No, just that the layoff is determined by those two primary factors, seniority and credentialing. Education Code 44845 defines an employee's seniority date as his or her first date of paid probationary service. The district may deviate from seniority by retaining employees to teach a specific course or course of study and who possess special training and experience to teach that course or course of study, or to provide those services, which others with more seniority do not possess. The board resolution identifies a number of such areas, including teachers possessing and teaching under single subject credentials and employees providing special education services. The resolution is presented for the board's approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee Dee. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Harvey. I'm sorry.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lindsay. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 10M, approval of playground repair equipment for various sites from Miracle Play Systems.
Yes, good evening. Submitted for your consideration tonight is the approval of repair equipment for various sites from Miracle Play Systems. And this is to repair 5 structures at 3 of our sites and bring them from the bottom of the grade spectrum up to the top and make them usable again by our students.
Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve.
Sorry, just a second. Motion's been made by Mr. Raw.
Second.
Oh, I'll give it to Mrs. Talcott. Roll
Board
call, please.
Board
That's
Member
because she got her hand in the air.
Gotta
Aye.
be quick. Gotta be quick, Cindy.
I know. it's-
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Let's move on to the resolution. Oh, that's a long one. Authorizing the execution and delivery of school impact mitigation agreements for Tivoli specific plan area and taking related actions. Is that Lizette?
Yes, it is.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. As I've updated the board in the past few Friday updates, we've been working for several months to bring forward an updated agreements. We've worked with the board facilities subcommittee in reviewing these alongside of our district partner in this, Modesto City Schools. And I'm happy to report I heard from Modesto City Schools. They had their meeting yesterday presenting this action item as well, which was approved by them last night. So we ask for the approval of the resolution, which has the sample agreement and would approve the agreement along with the resolution.
Could you clarify what that resolution is for the community, please?
I'd be happy to if you want me to.
Oh,
Or
sorry, didn't know
Go
it was
ahead,
you.
I don't
Mr.
want
Ross.
to take over your job, Lizette. Go ahead.
Oh, no, Mr. Raw, you have been invaluable in this process of facilities, and I am happy to have you help the community understand.
Okay, so Reader's Digest version. This is a resolution to create a CFD, a community facility district, in the Tivoli area. These CFDs are a funding source to create bonds and pay those bonds off with the property taxes that go with the homes within that area. The Tivoli CFD was created, help me out, Lizette, 2008, 2009. It was created some time ago. We actually, for the community, we actually bought property in that CFD. So we actually own the site. Those funds were actually bought with bond money that will be repaid from the CFD. But the CFD is very similar to the other CFDs that we have within the district. They help us in obtain funding so that we can build schools. We're currently working on 2 CFDs. The 1994-1, that's the Village 1 CFD. That one is winding down and probably will wind down. I will prophesy to you, even though I said a moment ago I'm not clairvoyant. I think that will be done in about a year or so. Most people have been moved off that tax roll and all the schools have been built for that. The CFD for Crossroads, it's partially done. The elementary was built, but the middle school, which is a portion of a middle school, will be funded from that CFD. The 2 new CFDs is one in the Tivoli area, and the second one is called Crossroads West, which we'll be handling in the near future. That is another CFD which houses will be built in. If you actually go out and look at the ground, you will actually see that they're actually starting to prepare the ground for building of structures in the Crossroads West CFD. They have not done that in Tivoli, but we're told, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Lizette, they said maybe this summer sometime they will be breaking ground in Tivoli.
Correct.
I mean, the community needs to know they're only going to sell houses as long as interest rates are low and inflation doesn't go completely out of control, which in the housing market, some might say has already happened. But nonetheless, those CFDs are moving forward because the inventory is very low in Stanislaus County for new home construction. And so they're moving forward with the building of new homes in the Tivoli and the Crossroads West area. So this particular resolution allows us to amend the previous resolution that we passed when we created Tivoli many years ago. Maybe some ownerships have changed, the circumstances have changed, but nonetheless, it needed to be upgraded and amended. A thing that everyone should remember, it should go down in the recording of this message is this CFD will only build a portion of a school. So we are allowed in these new agreements to join together with Tivoli, Crossroads West, and the original Crossroads to build one middle school. And if you added those 3 percentages together, I think they may take you a little over 100%. So between those 3 CFDs, we'll be able to fund at least one middle school and probably at least one elementary school and add that to our district. We as a school board would specifically decide where those schools would be built, even though we do own the property already in Tivoli, and we do have the designated spot already outlined in Crossroads West. So that's really what we're doing is we're updating this particular resolution and amendment to modify the CFD for Tivoli, and we will at a next board meeting or 2 do the Crossroads West one so that we're all in place. And then once those are done, we'll actually meet together, create a new CFD that will operate those 2 areas, and they will be populated by 2 board members from us and Modesto City Schools and 1 public member. So it will be a 5-member board that will run those. The current CIFA board will still manage 94, 97, and 98 CFDs. The new CIFA will manage Tivoli and Crossroads West.
Thank you, Mr. Raw.
Yeah,
I'll
I have to say, this is like Holly and Christine, you're really lucky to have gotten this at the beginning. That explanation is like 9 years too late, George. What I wouldn't have given for that summary as a new board member, that was really good. So I hope you appreciate that you get a better handling on CIFA and CFDs than I had. Took me 8 years.
You're welcome, Jen.
Good
And I'll,
job.
and I'll
Thank you,
second
Cindy.
that. I'll second
Good job.
that.
All right, George, did you make the motion or did you
I'll
just?
make the motion to
All right,
approve.
George's making the motion after that beautiful explanation and Cindy will second it and we'll take a roll
And
call.
Cindy's beautiful question.
Beautiful. Good job. Cindy, for the alley-oop, you get for the alley-oop. Good job.
Board
It's
member-
late. It's getting late.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, thank you very much. Very good. Let's go ahead. We're getting there. Approve our award to Comcast for E-rate RFP 212202 for WAN services, WAN, how it's pronounced.
Yes, I will be taking this item.
Okay.
We went through a process as we look for the next school year to secure WAN services or wide area network services. And these are our connections from all of our school sites back to the district. So that's our network, if you will, our internal district network. And that's what this is. These are providing all those pipelines and connections back to one. And I think this was one of the questions to distinguish between this versus our internet connections. So these connections connect all of us within the district. And then from there, we have a pipeline, if you will, or one main connection that goes back to the county. And that's our actual internet connection.
So this is intranet.
This is intranet, exactly. So this would be for those services for the following school year. And as part of the E-rate program, we can submit for funding for 80% of that to be covered under E-rate services under our current eligibility.
That was great. Thank you very much. I was just making a visual picture of that. That helps a lot. Okay, looking for a motion to approve that E-rate through Comcast.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Talcott,
Second.
second by Ms. Harvey. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm learning so much. Okay, 10P, approval of locker replacement for UStack Middle School modernization project.
This is me as
Spectacular.
well. I'm on a roll, but this I believe is my potential last action item. So we discussed this a little bit under the facilities update. We've been looking at for the past several months, along with the board facilities subcommittee, which I appreciate all of the assistance on that, and looking for a replacement to our lockers, and have proposed the resolution or the options that you have with replacing our existing 12 by 12 by 12 with the 12 by 12 by 24, so twice as high locker. That I have some additional updates from just my conversations today with Boyer. And in that, Boyer proposed to us if we contract with this directly with Shellco, which was the subcontractor, and basically take them out as the middleman, but they will absolutely continue to support us in the oversight of this. But being able to go directly with Shellco will take out about $1,500 of insurance costs. And Boyer has also very generously offered to, it's $1,000 on their behalf to reduce the price of that just a little bit further. So it would take us from what was in there under option 2 of a cost of $76,859 to $74,352, reduces that further by about $2,500. And that would be contracting directly with Shellco for that amount. And we would issue them a small project agreement, which I don't have because this was information from today. But if I have the authorization from you to move forward, we can get those ordered because there is a 10 to 12 week timeline to get those ordered and get those back. And then from there, we can get the ball rolling on getting those so we can get them in and installed as soon as possible. And then that small project agreement, I would just bring back to you as a consent item just to have that in the board record. So I think that's all. Oh, and the other part, how could I forget, is funding, right? So we've been talking about this project and how we all know the funding was tight on it. And in looking at going back and looking at where we are, Mr. Raw, you actually alluded to some funding left in Fund 25 and as well as Fund 14. We looked at those two funds to see what's left if we were to exhaust those remaining funds. And between those two, we're looking at about $30,000 when we take into account truing up everything that we have received, including that last DSA invoice that we will be processing. So that would be about $30,000. Wouldn't completely cover the $74,000, but it would be a start. The other piece is as we have some interest that gets applied for the rest of the year into these funds that could help offset. I don't know exactly what those amounts will be, but if some of that could be offset with that interest, we would apply that as well. But let's just say there wasn't any interest. We just say we're going to use those remaining $30,000 in Fund 14 and 25, which are the funds we use on this project. The remaining $44,000 and change we could have coming from our routine restricted maintenance fund, which is our resource 8150. There are projects in this, if you recall, we bring this to you and that fund with a specific list of projects that will be done. And there are several projects that we're still in process of doing and or maybe rolling to next year. But in addition to that, even if we did do those projects, the amount of the contribution that goes towards that 8150 actually increased in our budget by about 100,000 because we're required to contribute a certain percentage of our expenses. So with that increase in funding and some of those projects that may not happen this year or are still pending, there will be ample room there to utilize for about 44,000 of those funds and resource 8150 towards this. Again, with the understanding that if there's some additional interest that comes through and hits those other funds that we used on this project, we could apply that and anything remaining. The other point I want to make is that as we've looked at our overall year to date and where we are, because we did have a significant savings, Mr. Rao, you mentioned this in your question with our inspector of record. When we closed that out, we had about 40,000 that fell out that she didn't need a bill us for everything that she had projected and what we had in terms of a PO for that. I think you saw that in the construction recap. You see that's the only pending item that's listed there with a balance of 40,000. We'll close that out because there will be no more billings from that. But with that in mind, I wanted to share, I mean, we had about 100,000 less that we did not need to borrow from that Fund 40 versus what we had projected on the sheet. So that's definitely, I think, good news as we look at the overall funding of what was projected for the project.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, if there was money from what you projected on there, is there a reason you wouldn't take it, the residual from that fund rather than the routine repair and maintenance? Is there a reason for that? I mean, because what I'm hearing from you is there's two funds, you got about 30 grand. So that means you're short about 45,000 or so. I'm just rounding numbers. I thought there was about 40 grand left in the USTAC budget. So that would be pretty close, but you're saying that you didn't actually take as much out of the funds, the fund that you originally thought. So there really wasn't that much residual in there, or am I saying that wrong?
No, you're saying that correctly. So, I mean, the reason is I would propose that because it's not, I mean, we're still taking a portion of that from the original funding, and as opposed to borrowing that smaller amount, that 40-some thousand from that Fund 40, which we're going to have to pay back at some point, we
Right.
could utilize that increased funding into that 8150 routine restricted
it.
maintenance to help offset it. But we could also just as well, if we want to take that borrowing from there, I just think fiscally looking at the options, that would be a more recommended option.
And I'm fine with whatever method, because one day, if we all cross our fingers, we're going to receive our matching funds for Sylvan, for Orchard, for UStack, and we'll more than be able to pay those funds back. I mean, those funds will become flush again. They look kind of like the desert right now, that we bled them dry. And that was the goal of Mrs. Perez, was to get the job, get it done now, even though we were going to deplete the funds, but at some future date, they would be replenished with these matching funds from the state. We just may have to wait a bit for them. Well, fortunately, we were able to finish the project, and we still had a couple of bucks in each one, but I look forward to the day when the state matches us and we can replenish those funds. And then
You'll never see the day.
Hey,
You'll never see the day,
Hey.
George.
Hey.
You'll never see the day.
only optimism
Optimism.
allowed after 9 o'clock. Oh, shoot, we're
Okay.
not there yet.
I do have a question, Mrs. Mikawa.
Go ahead.
Because I'm not on the in group here. I have no idea what happened to the lockers that we purchased, and how much did we spend on them, and did we get our money back, or did we sell them, or
Yes.
what did we do with them?
Go ahead, George.
We got 7. So what happened is kind of a 2-part thing. We got $17,000 for them is what we got. And they're using a portion of the lockers again. So when you look at the lockers, they have kind of like a little cap on them, I think on the top, and end pieces and so forth. They're able to reuse those portions of it. But yeah, it's still an expensive thing. And I can tell you that we went through a big, long process, to get them replaced. The truth of the matter is, Mrs. Lindsay, there was a mistake made in the early days. How that mistake was made, we've never been able to uncover that rock. But somehow or another, it got past a whole lot of people to build 12 by 12 by 12 lockers. And then when we took a tour after we saw them, and they're beautiful, we saw, well, you can't really put much into them except maybe a lunch sack. So we needed something bigger. And I met with the PE department. They agreed that they could live with 12 by 12 by 24. Would they like 12 by 15 by 24? Yes, but that wasn't an option because of ADA requirements wouldn't allow us to go down that. So basically, in a nutshell, Mrs. Lindsay, I think we got the best option. We need to do this because what's there will not work at all. It's just not possible.
Mr. All, could any of those be used anywhere else on the campus that instead of just
we gave them back.
destroying?
We got $17,000 for them.
Oh,
What we
okay.
got for them. And so that we felt was probably the best deal we're going to get. It's kind of like a garage sale. You have this nice piece of furniture and you probably paid $1,500 for it, and you put it in a garage sale and you get $200 for it. Why? I don't know. But that's just how things seem to go.
So did you feel did the committee feel that these could not have been used like in the music room or the art rooms, or I mean 17,000 isn't very much money considering how much we paid for them to begin with. And
Right. Well, when you tour the campus, we already put new lockers in the art room. And there was no real place to put these on campus. They were not really reusable for us. There was no real location because we don't put them on the outsides of buildings any longer. That decision was actually made more than 25 years ago before I got on the board, that we would no longer have external lockers at our middle schools. And so there really wasn't an option for us other than a sell them ourselves or get a reimbursement. And after going through the process, I think Lizette, I think maybe agreed that we got the best we could get out of this. Now, it is expensive. We feel sick about it. There was a mistake early in the process. We feel sick about it, but people are helping us now a little bit. The contractor is not adding his profit and overhead to it. He's found us a way to contract directly with the sub to reduce the insurance costs. So this could have been a $125,000 item for us. And Lizette's done a real good job in getting it down as low as we can get it. And for where we're at, I think it's something we should move forward with because our teachers can't live with a 12 by 12 by 12.
Oh, I was never insinuating that. I just wondered, I never heard what happened to the whole thing. So I was interested in what happened.
Well, there is a long story that took several months and we went and had meetings with the PE staff.
Oh, I know.
I personally had 2 meetings with the PE staff. The principal had multiple meetings with the PE staff. So everyone was brought together because one thing we didn't want to happen was as a board to make a decision and then the PE staff to not buy in and hate us for not only the first decision, but the second decision too. And I think that they're on our team when it comes to the second decision. At least I feel that, and that's the feedback I'm getting back from the principal too, that this is something that we can live with. You know, these kids, Cindy, when you and I went to middle school, we didn't even have a backpack. Now kids are coming with suitcases rolling behind them, and the suitcase isn't going to fit in a 12 by 12 by 24. So,
and they don't even have books. I don't understand it.
Well, there's something in there, but they're pulling suitcases now, so it'll work. So I think my recommendation to my fellow board members was we beat this thing up for a long time. We've come to a solution, and I think it's time for us to move forward with this solution, even though none of us here are happy about spending this money on this solution. But we do need to fix this.
Oh, I wasn't even asking.
I'll make the motion.
My intention.
Great,
I'll
thank
make-
you.
I'll
Motion
make the-
made by Ms. Harvey. Looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Raw. Roll call, please.
Board Member
Aye.
Harvey, Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, George, for that explanation. Thank you, Lizette, for just chipping away. That's very helpful. And to Boyer, and it's the best case scenario for where we were. So thank you. Okay, let's wrap it up with 10Q, approve expenditure of construction funds. Any questions? Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Harvey,
Second.
second by Mrs. Talcott.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Raw,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, the motion carries. Awesome. Okay, we're on the last one, consent agenda. Is there any board member that has a question on any of those? There's not very many. Any questions or any items that need to be removed for a separate vote?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
I have to figure out which number it is. I can't, D, I believe.
Mhm.
What is this, this contract? I'm not aware of seeing it before. Have we done it before? The choice of hearing and talk chats?
Is Dawn here?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm here.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that would be good.
Yeah, so this is in relationship to the a settlement agreement that you voted on last board meeting and approved. This is the
Okay,
contract with
okay,
the- with the
okay.
company.
I thought this was like a yearly rollover contract, and I thought, I've never heard of this before. Okay, thank
No.
you.
No problem.
Awesome. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Emotion.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Talcott and second by
Second.
Mrs. Harvey. Roll call, please.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Ross,
Aye.
Board Member Talcott,
Aye.
Board President Miyakawa.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, just a reminder that our next, we'll have another budget study session because it's just that time of year. And on March 30th, right before our regular board meeting. Thank you to all those who are in attendance. We have a retired board member that joined us tonight, so a little shout out there. Thank you to staff for all the work that always goes into making these meetings successful and informative. And with that, we'll wish you all a good night and see you next time.
Right.